inspired to push through. Because there's a spark in you. Breakthrough or bust. Hello, hello. Well, welcome if you're new to Breakthrough or Bust, and welcome back to all of my beautiful friends. I am so glad you're here, and this is going to be yet another shift in the evolution of Breakthrough or Bust. So, Breakthrough or Bust has been about sharing stories to inspire you, to continue to keep moving forward because transformations are challenging. Like, we always want to think about, it's all like enlightenment and right? But truly the work is gritty. And it's easy to back down. It's easy to fall back into those old beliefs, the old fears. It's easy to not trust yourself, when the whole world is doing it differently and you feel like in your heart it's got to be this other way. And there's just so many ways that we can back down. And so Breakthrough or Bust came about in the beginning to share stories so that you could relate to what other people were going through and maybe see yourself there a little bit too, and just be inspired, and not to mention to maybe be healing for the people telling the stories, to get to share those stories. So that's how it's been going. And then recently I was just getting this like nudge to start to shift things around, to start to do things maybe a little bit differently. And, more and more these thoughts and ideas were coming. And you've already seen, I've sort of shifted to, well, now I'm streaming it. And, people are still coming and visiting. We tend to be having more conversations about different topics than specifically that person's story. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was even roll with that energy a little bit more and bring in the energy updates for the week. So what I had been doing was I'd go live every week and share, sort of what's going on energetically around us. And I'm a big believer in doing that for empowerment, not to play victim to, oh, well, here's what the energy is. I guess I'll give up. No, this is how we roll with it so that we can be in that our greatest sense of power, right? So I was doing that, and then I was doing this, and it started to occur to me, well, maybe I do those together, because wouldn't that be a really great topic of conversation? And then it's also going to be more relatable at a time where energetically this is what's coming up. So, it started to feel like, wow, this might be more in alignment. And actually, I'm going to share with you this week's energy before I even go further into that, because I do think that it's pretty fascinating. So, this week, we are moving into a new moon, right? And that is on Wednesday, tomorrow. And what the new moon brings is new beginnings, right? Planting those intentions, those seeds, reflecting, right? The new moon is when it's just a sliver of light. So we're mainly dark, right? Things have darkened. So we're going inward. It's not like that bright full moon energy where we're like, woo, right? So we're going inward, and we're sort of taking inventory. But we're also coming through this big transit of a lot of energy that's been coming up. We've been really facing our fears head on. We've been really evaluating our beliefs, all of these things that we have carried around with us for so many years. It could be people that loved us, taught us these things. And all of a sudden we're saying, this might actually not work for me. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that that person loved you less or that you don't love them because, you're not going to operate on that system anymore. It just means it got you here. It got you here. And so now we're recalibrating what is working for us. And a lot of what I'm sensing is now we're going to move to the other side of it and get the messages. Now we're going to start to receive our messages as to maybe what the purpose was of all of this, of facing all of this, or how it's going to show up going forward. It's just just going to start getting some more guidance and some more clarity on where this is taking us. And so, and it's okay, so it's funny because this is happening as I'm more fully shifting into changing this show. And of course, right, the new beginnings. And I find it very fascinating because I'm actually allowing myself to be in that flow, which, I mean, honestly, maybe even a year ago, maybe a little more, 2 years for sure, I would not have done it. I would have continued to just like beat down, that wall and just, nope, this is the way it has to happen, right? This makes sense. This makes logical sense. This is how it happens. Oh, that's a nice idea, but that's not logical. So I'm not going to do that, right? And I would just continue to move forward, or even I would not want to change things up because I wouldn't want to appear unstable, flaky, right? Too woo woo. Oh, she's all over the place. She's floating around, you know? And so, well, no, I need to stick with this because of that. Um, I'm sure there were many other reasons, right? So essentially, I would just continue and I would always say it felt like banging my head on a brick wall. Like this was my pattern, bang my head on a brick wall, like, because logically this is how it should happen and this is how it makes sense, and so I'm just going to keep hammering at that wall with my head. Right? And we're being led, we're being guided, whether it's, coming however you believe it, that it's coming from you or if it's coming from the divine, but we're getting these messages to help us, to guide us, so that it doesn't have to be hard. Right? We've all learned that things have to be hard in order to be successful. Well, they don't have to be. Maybe they're a challenge, maybe that shows up for you, but it never has to be like banging your head on the brick wall. That's not how it's supposed to be. So when you're getting these nudges, these downloads, these guidance, messages, listen to them, trust them. I think of how many times I have done this and I've made it so much harder. I mean, honestly, I want to share that, but I'm like, there's so many times, it's countless. I would be going on half the day. I feel like I've done this so many times in my life. And so now what I'm just allowing myself to do is flow, is to be in that flow. Um, I just recently saw somebody describe the divine feminine as this river, right? A body of water that's moving, and the divine masculine as the riverbed. And so, that divine feminine, if she's, out there on her own without a riverbed, it's just water everywhere, right? It's chaos. But that divine masculine without water, I mean, it's nothing, right? It doesn't make sense. It's just barren and dry and probably just goes straight in a line. And what fun is that? You can't go tubing down that, right? So when you blend them, when you bring them together, and then the feminine is sort of guiding that masculine, like, oh, over this way, right? Because a river doesn't just go straight, it curves and it weaves, and right, so that feminine is saying, oh, we're gonna go this way now, and the masculine's like, all right, I got you, I've got this, all right, oh, I'm holding you in place. Right? And they blend together, and that's sort of what I envision, what I want to see happen for myself and all of my activities and the things that I do. And so as these nudges come, these desires come to like, oh, let's go this way with it. Oh, this is nice, but I bet if we did this a little bit, and now all I have to do is do it. And it gets to be just that easy. And it doesn't feel like I'm struggling or overwhelmed or, you know, worrying about what people are going to think because the right people are going to show up. So that is that is what I'm embracing as I start to make these shifts with the show. Hey Marie, happy Thanksgiving. Um this is this is so basically it's just clay. It's clay again. It's clay again. And last week we had an amazing show with Brandon Hanley. If you didn't see that, go back and check that out. I know it was a little bit longer, but it was friggin' awesome. And so he was sort of that step in the transition as we moved into this. And sometimes it'll just be me coming on here and talking about the energy. And what I'd like to do, what I would like to commit to you, is to be a little bit more vulnerable, right? I do share my stories, I do tell things, um but I want to do so even more. I want to do so even more, if that makes sense. I want to do it more from that place of vulnerability and not having to look like I've got it all together or anything. I don't really think that's what was coming across anyway. But if I was trying, I'm going to let that go. Okay. Um, and so that's what I want to commit to you. I want to commit to being vulnerable with this. And I'm going to have guests come on, and that's what I'm going to ask of them before they even agree to come on is, do you agree to be vulnerable to this? And guess what? Like the week you come on, I don't even know what that energy is yet, right? So are you open and then having a conversation about it? And so that was a big part of it, is like these revelations are coming, the breakthroughs are coming, the insights, the clarity, it's all starting to come. And a lot of times we don't want to take the action until it's clear. And I know definitely that's another one of mine. And we don't have to do that. We can just take a step and see where the next step takes us. Because if you wait for it to be clear, you might not ever see it because you needed to take that step in order to see the next step. Now, this is something that I've been embracing a lot more in my life because I'm the planner, right? I'm sure raise your hand if we have any other control freaks out there. That's what we do. And and so no, I'll look unprofessional. No, I'll look, ridiculous. I'll look this, right? All of the things, all of the things. And sometimes we just have to set all of the things down and just take a step in faith. And I'm seeing this happen not only in my professional life, but I'm seeing this happen in my personal life. And where I'm like in these situations where I'm like, this makes no sense. Like on paper, this is ridiculous. This makes absolutely no sense for me in my life anywhere. And yet somehow it still feels right. And I'm like, what kind of villainy is this? Right. um, but so what I've decided to do is let go and trust and trust. And, I keep going back to this quote. I love this quote from Becoming an Empowered Empath is sometimes your intuition will guide you around the fire, and sometimes it'll march you right through it if that's where the lessons are to be learned. So, you know what? Maybe it doesn't make any sense right now in this moment, and it might not for a while. But if it feels right, trust it and follow it, because whether it's going to go great or whether it's going to, totally be a suck fest is doesn't matter. It's what's guiding you to your highest good and what is helping you grow as a human. And, it's funny, I was just on a call with someone where we talked a lot about that idea of planning so many steps ahead to avoid any kind of, emotional backlash, right? We don't want to feel those feelings. But ultimately, as humans, that's what we're here to do. We're here to feel because, like that's the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose of being here in this human body is to experience being human. So avoiding emotions isn't helping us grow. And remember, if there's no right or wrong, there's no right or wrong emotions either. So they're just all different. And we get to experience them and feel them. And, it's like yin and yang. Without the good or without the dark, we don't feel the warmth, right? Or we don't feel that sun without the moon. And so it's all part of that beautiful tapestry. And I know for sure I am feeling that intensely in all of this transit we've been going through and very vulnerably. Um, having to put myself out there a little bit more where I would normally be like kind of stoic, like in my personal life. I wouldn't admit to things. I would be like, and I'm having to get into that zone of being vulnerable, of being uncomfortable, of owning my emotions, owning my feelings, even when it's something I don't like. And I tell you what, I did this last week. I really had that radical acceptance of where I was with a couple things. And as soon as I did, immediately that day, it shifted. It was insane. I said, I don't like this. I don't like where I am in this situation. I've got, you know, a lot of energy going out, nothing coming in, right? And truly, I did have stuff coming in, but it was sort of like stopped. It was paused, like out here. Like, and if you're listening, I'm like just gesturing around, like my stratosphere, I guess, right? So as soon as I sat down and I said, I don't like it. I don't like this place, then I felt it. I felt it. I allowed myself to feel it. And I actually did this with a couple situations. Um, and sometimes I was frustrated, and sometimes I was angry, and sometimes I was just sad. And it was also very funny. So, this is me being vulnerable. It was funny to me how reluctant I was to admit sadness. That was the last one that would show up for me. Like, oh, like all these other emotions were protecting me from the sadness. If that makes any sense, right? If you can relate to that, I would love to know. And so when I finally got down to the sadness and I felt it, and then it was over. Then I could release it. I could let it go. And so I did. I let it go. And that day, things shifted. So all of those things that were kind of sort of stopped just outside of me came in. Every single one. It was mind blowing. It was mind blowing. And yeah, so that is where I've been with all of this energy. Would love to hear from you. And as a matter of fact, I do have someone sharing. So I want to go and take a look at some of the things that are being shared. Yes. So beautiful Marie is here. And I actually just did a podcast with her. I visited her on her podcast, and she's actually letting me know that the podcast might be released right around Thanksgiving. So woohoo, I'll be sharing that with you soon. But yes, Marie is a planner as well. She is saying, I get what you're saying. I have to plan first and then try them. Other times I just do first, depends on what it is I'm working on. Yeah. And sometimes that's what makes sense. So, but I would say not being married to, it has to be crystal clear, like the entire journey has to be trekked out before we take that first step. Sometimes it does make sense and that's what feels right, but if your gut is telling you take that step, don't ignore it. And that's what Marie's saying is trust your gut. Yeah. Um yeah, and that's it. We talked about that a bit on Marie's show about that owning it, loving it, and embracing the shadows. Yeah, and the changes, right? Those essentially, your shadows are kind of what you don't want everybody to know about you. And so when you embrace them, it's like big deal if they do, right? If they accidentally find out about your shadows, it's not a big deal if you've already embraced them. It's like, oh yeah, that's old news. What are you talking about? I already know about that. That's okay. I love my shadows. They're what make me me. So yeah, would love to hear from you. I love the comments that I get in all of the places, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, on the podcast. Love it. Love hearing from you. Um, and yeah, let me know how this is resonating for you. Let me know if you want to come visit and talk about some of this energy at some point. Let me know. Just let me know. How is this working for you? Um and how best I can support you, right? Because I see you, I love you, and I believe in you. Keep pushing through because there's a spark in you.